secondary is a big question. The linebackers are pretty much all new for the most part. So this running back core, I think, gains a lot of intrigue from the fan base in terms of what's going to happen. But it's filled with optimism that we're loaded. It's going to be good, but who's going to take control of it?
Yeah, and from what we keep seeing, it's been Mayan Williams repping first most of the time, which would lend you to believe he's going to be the starter this year. But I think you're going to see Mayan Williams, Master Teague, and Travion Henderson all being part of that workload. That's going to be the committee in my mind. And then throughout the season, does that 3-man rotation get whittled down to a 2-man rotation, or does one guy simply take it over? And I think Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson could do that. I don't know that that's what Master Teague can do. We've seen what he can do, and he said he's better. He's worked on his vision. He's worked on his agility in the offseason, which he wasn't really able to work on while he was rehabbing. So he believes he's better. But Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson provide more of the wiggle that is missing when Master Teague is in there. But there's a role for all of these guys. And I think it's going to be a very good room with an outstanding offensive line to run behind, and that's only going to make C.J. Stroud better. But I think the biggest question for me is I'll be interested to watch Travion Henderson's carries as the season goes on, because it might be 6 against Minnesota, and then it might be 8 against Oregon, and then Tulsa, and it just keeps going up and up and up. And we'll see how long everybody can hold him off. And Mayan Williams is going to have a great opportunity to do that, because if he's the first guy, then he's going to be able to set the first impression and set the tone. And I know everybody's looking forward to seeing what he can do, looking forward to seeing what he looks like in the fourth quarter with 15 carries, 18 carries with a lather, because we've only seen him in snippets, and it's been good, but I think everybody wants to see more.
I'm not quite ready to write off Master Teague just yet. I don't know, and I don't know that that's even what it would be if somebody else started, because I think he still has a valuable role. I think he's proven that he can handle the workload, and he's a good pass protector. And I know he's got limitations, or at least has not kind of stretched his boundaries with what he could show last year at times. And Trey Sermon was a much-needed replacement, down toward the end of the season to kind of put him over the top, it seemed like. But to my way of thinking, I think there's a role for Teague. I think there's a role for Mayan. And I think there's a role for Travion Henderson, and maybe even for Marcus Crowley and Evan Pryor, too. So I'm not writing any of these people off. I think that you have to it could be a committee approach, and that doesn't bother me. I know there's going to be people who say, oh, you got to get a guy in a groove. And until that 20th carry, no one's really in a groove. I don't necessarily buy that. So I'm interested to see, as I like to say all the time, interested to see how they're going to handle it.
Yeah, I remember, what was it, I think it was the 2014 season. They had 5 backs going into the season. We didn't know that Zeke was going to be Zeke, and things started to sort itself out. I mean, I think on that, wasn't Warren Ball and Breonte Dunn, weren't they part of the mix there? And
probably, yeah.
And I think Rod Smith was still part of the mix, and things start to work themselves out. I really think that Mayan Williams, don't call me meatball, call me chop or pork chop. I think that he's somebody that could certainly have an impact, but he's one of those backs that needs to build up a little bit of that lather. He's going to be better on carries 11 through 15 than he is 1 through 5 or 4 through 9. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they sort these things out. I'm curious to see what Master Teague looks like this year. Let's not forget, he was coming off of a pretty major injury from the 19 season. And then he gets thrown out there, doesn't necessarily have the run-up that these players are used to having going into a season. So people are so quick to punt on Master Teague. I think it might be a little premature at this point. I did a national radio show this morning where they asked me about the true freshman I'm most excited about seeing, and it is Trevion Henderson. I think Trevion Henderson is a difference maker. I think he's somebody who's going to go in there and take carries away from other guys just because you can't keep them off the field. But I'm not ready to sell on Master Teague yet.
People are enamored with a home run hitter, whether it be a running back or wide receiver. I saw a stat that I'm not going to be able to completely remember, but it was during the NFL Combine. They were showing the best wide receivers in the NFL, a list of all the guys that you would think of right off, and where they rated, and they were not at the top of their class in regards to speed. So it's not all about speed. But Kevin, we'll stay with you because this kind of transitions right into the question we get in from AVI. AVI, appreciate the Super Chat contribution so much. Just how good do you guys think this year's offense will be in comparison to last year's, and how, if any, will it look different?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen record-setting offenses each of the last couple of years, and each year it's like, well, this is as good as it gets, and then it kind of gets a little bit better. So, I think that this offense could be tremendous. You look at that receiver room, you look at Olave, you look at Garrett Wilson, you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba, you look at throwing somebody in like Marvin Harrison. You look at the offensive line that they have. They're just so deep there. They have to find a way to get DeJuan Jones out there, that you're moving an All-American, preseason All-American tackle to guard, potentially, with Thayer Munford. So I think when you sit there and you have a situation of where you are able to start up front with a tremendous offensive line, an offensive line that probably will be among the best in the nation, should be right there for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the top offensive line. You have a receiver core like that. I think they have a more than capable running back room, as we just kind of talked about the running backs. And I think that these young quarterbacks are going to be able to do a lot. So, I think that they could put up some huge numbers. But with that being said, let's remember, especially last year, Justin Fields was a couple years into his journey. Justin Fields was in his second year at Ohio State. It wasn't a lot of, we talk about maybe some limitations on what you're doing with somebody. I don't think that, I don't think we're going to come out here in week 1, week 2 and be like, this offense is going to put up 55 points a game. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a growing process. But I think once it's all said and done, I think that this offense is going to be very similar in terms of output compared to some of the other great offenses that we've seen over the last few years.
I think there'll be plenty of similarities to what we saw last year. I was just looking back, and each of the last 3 new starting quarterbacks at Ohio State, J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, and Justin Fields, the Buckeyes averaged over 40 points per game each time those guys were in their first year. And Ohio State's been over 40 points per game in 6 of their last 9 years. So at this point, I would expect the Buckeyes to score over 40 points a game, run the ball for about 250 yards, try to throw it for, another 250, and be that balanced offense that they always strive for. Sometimes that balance leads to 300 yards rushing or 300 yards passing. It's not necessarily that they want to be split, but they just want to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And I think that's the kind of offense they have, because the thing is, they've got the running game, they've got the offensive line, they've got the receivers. All that they're missing, and they may not be missing it, is the quarterback, because he's going to have time to throw. He's going to have guys to throw to. The defense is going to have to be focused on the running game. So there's really no need for any big changes, because everything is set up for this quarterback to look just like quarterbacks of the past. And maybe there's a little bit more running. I still think you have to have the threat of the run, because when they didn't have that in 2018, you saw how it negatively impacted J.K. Dobbins, who became an average running back. And we know that he's not average. And so having C.J. Stroud with that threat to run makes the offense even better. So they'll be the best offense in the Big Ten, one of the, top 10 offenses in the Power 5 in terms of, just being able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. But then they have to also then be able to do it in January, which will be the real test.
Yeah, they don't need a record-setting offense this year. What they need is vast improvement on defense, for the overall picture to be better in the end. And of course, they only lost the one game last year to Alabama. So even with how suspect the defense was, they were still able to win games. But some of that margin for error will be gone this year because I don't look for them to be quite as explosive or productive on offense. They're going to be really good. And I think Tony's hit the nail on the head. Around 40 points or more, 250 yards rushing will be the goal. And if they can get to 250 yards passing, then so be it. They're going to find ways to create offense and create production. And honestly, until we see Stroud in a game, we're just kind of, feeling our way through the dark here because it's such an unknown. You just don't know how he's going to respond to what he's going to see. Is he going to read and react and make proper calls and put the ball where it's supposed to go? Coach Day has said all the right things about what Stroud has showed them in practice, but is he also turning it over 2-3 times a day? We don't know that. So are the other guys turning it over 4 times a day? We don't know that. So and is he the best by default? We don't know, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. It seems like he's answered the bell and done everything that they wanted him to do. So it looks like he's going to do a good job. And again, I think you just have to go into the first game with an open mind and just see where it takes them, see where the defense, what the defense gives them, how they take advantage of it, and how they put points on the board. I think it's going to be an interesting case study, certainly, of what happens when you lose a quarterback as accomplished as Fields, and you have to turn that corner to the next guy or guys and what it looks like.
About a stat during the Monday night game last night that Urban Meyer was trailing in this ball game in the preseason game by 20 points, that he trailed in 3 games at Ohio State by 20 points. They came quickly to mind, of course. Clemson, Purdue, Iowa would have had to been the 3. So not in that position very many times, but he's finding it a little different there in Jacksonville right now, talking about offense, because you got to block some people up front.